baby steps, but did that feel like the old Manchester City?
You judge the results. We saw during 8 years our level. We are not in our level. We won, we are so happy it will help us. You judge results, our performance was not good.
In today's video, we're going to make a strictly ordered guide to all the main reasons why Man City have fallen so massively in the last 2 months. Maybe you all expect us to start with Rodri this or Foden that. Yeah, they're the obvious part of the problem, but the big one is much deeper than that, and that is the Man City mentality. Realistically, we're used to seeing the Citizens as one of the most mentally sound teams in the world, arguably the second best in the last decade, only behind Real Madrid, who are unachievable when it comes to mentality. So let's take the same mentality and put it to the test after the first defeat in this painful run of results, the loss to Spurs in October. Yeah, it must have felt bad to go out in the second round of a tournament, but at the end of the day, it's the least important one, the League Cup. It's not a big deal, we move on. Then, an away game against 10th place Bournemouth, an opponent they always beat for fun. In their previous 4 meetings, Man City have scored a total of 15 goals and only conceded twice. It has to be an easy win for us to bounce back from the loss to Spurs. But what happens? Another defeat, 2-1, and most importantly, not just a defeat, but one that could have been even more devastating as the Cherries missed at least 3 more great chances. What's the mentality now? Okay guys, we've been in a situation where we've lost 2 in a row. We will bounce back and dominate as usual, but then came 3 more losses, in which City only scored 2 goals and conceded 10. However, we can't overlook the fact that in those first 4 defeats, between Spurs in the EFL Cup and Brighton in the Premier League, Man City were away in each of them, so that could probably be used as justification. But still, we're talking about the best teams in the world. Then came the first home game of this run, against Spurs, this time in the Premier League, in which we saw arguably the worst Man City display of the Pep Guardiola era. Judge us all you want, but give us a hint if you can think of a worse Citizens performance in the last 8 years. That 4-0 thrashing in front of your own fans was extremely disappointing, but the result that really made things go from bad to worse, in my opinion, was the game against Feyenoord, and here I will explain why. Firstly, in that game we saw a Man City side that seemed to have forgotten the previous shocks, or at least 90% of the game. Plenty of chances, most of them converted. 3-0 lead early in the second half. All the negativity seemed to have disappeared, but then something suddenly changed. As if a demon took control of the players, everyone stopped playing. Feyenoord scored 3 goals in less than 15 minutes, and in the end that same demon took control of Guardiola. We all saw him in the press conference afterwards with those bruises and cuts on his head. There is no need to go deeper after that. Defeats to Liverpool, Juventus, Man United, Aston Villa. The Citizens were unbelievably poor in each of those games, until that refreshing win over West Ham. So yeah, that's our verdict. From a point where the media, fans and pundits are all repeating hundreds of times that you're not the same, that everything is gravely wrong, that he needs to change something as soon as possible. All this tension starts to build up, and combined with all the other problems we'll discuss in a minute, we have the final result in front of us. 3 wins in 15 games. And Guardiola himself explained it pretty well in his latest interview for Sky Sports.
No, it's completely normal that people doubt about that now. It's completely normal. I have to deal with all of you, and it's always the same subject, the pattern. So it's just words.
And before we finish with that first big reason, let's say this. After the pressure has built up so much in the first, let's say 10 games in this run, it's perfectly normal for people to stop talking, which in turn has given Guardiola the chance to work in peace without anyone having high expectations. And that, in my opinion, is the main reason for the win over West Ham. It was the first time in almost 3 months that Man City have scored 4 goals in a game. Now, let's talk about the obvious reason, the one that everyone tends to point to, the absence of Rodri. Yeah, when your main player is injured until the end of the season, of course the level drops. But from today's perspective, and the extent of this poor form, do you still think that Rodri is the main reason? Because it's a fact that a lot of people say he's currently the Ballon d'Or winner, the best footballer on the planet. Of course he's the main reason. Yeah, he could be part of the problem, but it's not the main one. To give you an example, imagine if Vinicius had won the Ballon d'Or, or Lautaro Martinez. Do you think Real Madrid or Inter Milan would be in a similar crisis? I think the answer to that question speaks for itself. I think people are focusing on the wrong things. Yeah, Rodri's absence is undoubtedly causing problems, but why is nobody pointing the finger at the management? They invested heavily in recent years and still kept the financial books in the green. But in 2024, they only spent 25 million euros for Savinho and brought back Ilkay Gundogan from Barcelona on a free transfer, which was a very bad decision, by the way. But I'll come back to that later. Having said that, Man City under Guardiola have always been known as a team with incredible depth, with at least 2, if not 3, top players in every position. This season, that seems to have changed a bit after the departure of Alvarez, Joao Cancelo, Calvin Phillips, Palmer, Mahrez and Laporte in the last 2 summers. But the situation is still not that bad. I mean, the management took care to strengthen every position in the team last season, except for the defensive midfield. And here is the real issue. The Rodri problem is not his absence, but the lack of a replacement. Neither Gundogan nor Mateo Kovacic are pure defensive midfielders. You can see that with a naked eye, and the citizens are currently suffering from the consequences. As for Gundogan, he played superbly for Barca last season, and he played behind the striker, and this is where he excels the most. The closer he is to the penalty area, the more damage he can do. That's why his past record suggests that the defensive mid role is obviously not the one for him, and the same goes for Kovacic. Another factor that surely adds up to their downfall is the poor performance of key players, such as Phil Foden, Jack Grealish and Kevin De Bruyne. All 3 were fundamentally in the treble-winning season of 2023, but they are all very different this term. And while it's more or less normal for Grealish to fall off the radar, having suffered such setbacks several times since arriving at the Etihad, for De Bruyne and especially Foden, it's simply inexplicable. Just a few months ago, Foden was voted the Premier League's best player for the 2023-24 season, and an incredible achievement that should have taken his individual performance to the next level. Of course, we can't overlook the fact that he was injured at the start of the season, but since mid-September, he has stayed healthy and played the full 90 minutes in the majority of games. As for De Bruyne, there is an explanation for his form. He is now 33, will be 34 in June, and has been a citizen for 10 seasons, and has less than 6 months left on his current contract. Although he has stated that he doesn't care, there is no way for it not to affect his mindset. And Grealish, what can you say about him? 100 million euros 4 years ago. Maybe he was worth it, maybe not. But even though Pep keeps defending him by saying he's not brought in to score goals and provide assists, you can't really justify yourself as a player when you haven't scored for over a year. And finally, another reason that goes under the radar is that a dip in form like this was expected sooner or later. I mean, that's the way football works, especially when you've been winning for so long. Liverpool experienced a massive drop-off just a few months after winning the Champions League and Premier League. Real Madrid went trophyless in 2018-19, just months after winning their 3rd consecutive Champions League. Ultimately, when you're used to such a killer rhythm, playing every 3 days for years, it can't help but affect your mentality, even if you play for Man City and your manager is Pep Guardiola. And to push the Catalans' point a little further, could you please tell me one great coach who hadn't had a bad run of results? Sir Alex, Johan Cruyff, Carlo Ancelotti, all of them have had their incredible heights, but also some notable lows. With that said, we've come to the end of today's video, so let's finish it slowly. If you made it this far, which probably means you've enjoyed it, don't hesitate to like and subscribe, or just check out our video on Man City's 115 charges. Take care, and I'll see ya in the next one.